Detective Morrison, I know you think I'm crazy, but I can tell you exactly what happened to Private Henry Walsh on the night of December 3rd, 1943. He wasn't killed by enemy fire. He was murdered by Sergeant Collins behind the old church in Normandy, and his body was buried under the stone bridge near the river. I know because I was there. I was Henry Walsh. Detective Sarah Morrison stared at the 16-year-old boy sitting across from her desk at the police station, trying to decide whether she was dealing with a disturbed teenager or witnessing something that would change her understanding of reality forever. Tyler Brennan had been brought in by his concerned parents after months of what they called delusional episodes, where he claimed to remember being a World War II soldier who had been murdered by his own sergeant. The boy had become a laughingstock. At Jefferson High School, students mocked him in the hallways, calling him Dead Guy Tyler and Ghost Boy. Teachers dismissed his claims as attention-seeking behavior or mental illness. His parents had taken him to 3 different psychiatrists, all of whom had prescribed various medications and therapies to treat what they diagnosed as dissociative disorder or elaborate fantasy delusions. But Tyler's delusions had a disturbing quality that set them apart from typical teenage fantasies. He spoke with intimate knowledge about military procedures, weapons, and battle tactics from 1943. He could describe the taste of K rations, the weight of a field pack, and the exact sound a rifle made when jammed with mud. Most unsettling of all, he claimed to have detailed memories of his own murder, a crime that, according to military records, had never been investigated as anything more than a combat casualty. "Tyler," Detective Morrison said, leaning back in her chair, "do you understand why your parents brought you here? They're worried about you. These stories you're telling, they're causing problems at school, at home, and frankly, they're not possible." Tyler looked at her with eyes that seemed far too old for his young face. "I know how it sounds, Detective. I know everyone thinks I'm insane. But I remember everything about that night in 1943. Every detail, every moment. And I know that Henry Walsh, that I was murdered, and the man who killed me got away with it." "Tyler, Henry Walsh was a real person. He did die in France during World War II, but that doesn't mean you were him. You could have read about him online, seen his name in a history book, heard stories from older relatives. Then how do I know?" "About the letter?" Tyler asked quietly. "What letter?" "The letter Henry wrote to his girlfriend Sarah McKinnon the night before he died. He never sent it because Sergeant Collins interrupted him. The letter was hidden in Henry's jacket pocket when he was buried. It was written on torn paper from a field manual, page 47, the section about radio protocols. In the letter, Henry told Sarah about a secret hiding place behind their high school where he'd left something for her, a silver locket that belonged to his grandmother." Detective Morrison felt a chill run down her spine. She'd been researching Tyler's claims for the past week, ever since his parents had contacted the police department. The military records showed that Private Henry Walsh had indeed died in France on December 3rd, 1943, but there had never been any mention of a letter, a girlfriend named Sarah McKinnon, or any suspicious circumstances surrounding his death. "Tyler, where did you get this information?" "I didn't get it anywhere. I lived it. I remember writing that letter by candlelight in a bombed-out building." "I remember being interrupted by Sergeant Collins, who was drunk and angry about something that had happened earlier that day. I remember him accusing me of cowardice, of planning to desert. I remember the fight, and I remember the feeling of his hands around my throat." Tyler's voice broke slightly as he continued. "I remember thinking about Sarah as I died, wondering if she'd ever know what happened to me, if she'd think I abandoned her or forgot about her. I remember the pain of knowing I'd never see her again, never get to marry her like we'd planned." Detective Morrison had handled hundreds of cases involving troubled teenagers, but something about Tyler's demeanor, the consistency of his story, and the emotional authenticity of his recollections made her pause. Against her better judgment, she decided to investigate further. "Tyler, I'm going to look into this, but I need you to understand that if these claims turn out to be false, if you've somehow fabricated this story, there could be serious consequences." "I understand," Tyler replied. "But, Detective, what if they're true? What if Henry Walsh really was murdered and his killer has been dead for decades without ever facing justice? Don't the families deserve to know the truth?" Over the next 2 weeks, Detective Morrison found herself diving deeper into World War II records than she'd ever expected. She contacted the National Archives, military historians, and genealogy researchers. Slowly, impossibly, Tyler's story began to check out in ways that defied explanation. Private Henry Walsh had indeed existed. He'd been a 19-year-old from Ohio who'd enlisted in 1942. His military records showed he'd died on December 3, 1943, in Normandy, France, listed as killed in action, with no additional details. But as Morrison dug deeper, she discovered that there had been some irregularities in the initial report. The most shocking discovery came when she contacted the local historical society in Henry's hometown. An elderly volunteer named Margaret Collins, the great-niece of a World War II veteran, mentioned that her great-uncle had served in the same unit as Henry Walsh. Sergeant James Collins, Margaret told Detective Morrison over the phone. He came back from the war changed, according to my family. He was always drunk, always angry. He used to have nightmares and would scream about someone named Henry. My grandmother said he carried guilt about something that happened in France, but he never talked about it specifically. Did he ever mention anything about Henry Walsh specifically? Actually, yes. Before he died in 1987, he made a deathbed confession to my grandmother. He said he'd done something terrible during the war, something involving a soldier named Henry. He said he'd killed a good man in a moment of rage and had lived with the guilt for 40 years. My grandmother never knew what to do with that information. Detective Morrison's hands were shaking as she hung up the phone. Tyler's impossible memories were being corroborated by independent sources that he couldn't have known about. But the most stunning verification came when Morrison decided to research Tyler's claim about the letter and the girlfriend named Sarah McKinnon. After hours of searching through old records, she found a Sarah McKinnon who had indeed lived in Henry's hometown during the 1940s. Sarah had died in 2018 at the age of 95, but she'd left behind a memoir she'd written for her grandchildren. Into the memoir, which Morrison obtained from Sarah's family, there was an entire chapter devoted to her first love, a young man named Henry Walsh, who'd gone off to war and never returned. Sarah had written about waiting for letters that never came, wondering if Henry had forgotten her or found someone else in Europe. Most remarkably, Sarah had written about a conversation she'd had with Henry before he left for war, where he'd told her about a special hiding place behind their old high school, where he would leave a surprise for her if anything ever happened to him. Sarah had searched for years but had never found anything. My heart never fully healed from losing Henry. Sarah had written, I married another man and had a good life, but I always wondered what happened to him, why he never wrote, whether he thought of me in his final moments. Detective Morrison realized that Tyler's claims about the letter and the hidden locket might actually be verifiable. She contacted Sarah's family and explained the situation. With their permission and assistance, she organized a search behind the old Jefferson High School building. What they found sent shockwaves through the small Ohio community. Hidden behind a loose brick in a maintenance shed that had stood since the 1930s was a small metal box. Inside was a silver locket exactly as Tyler had described, along with a photograph of Henry and Sarah together and a note written in Henry's handwriting. For my darling Sarah, so you'll always have something to remember me by. All my love, Henry. The discovery made local news, and Tyler's story began to spread beyond his small town. The teenager who had been mocked and ridiculed for his impossible memories was suddenly being taken seriously by adults who had previously dismissed him. But Tyler wasn't finished. With Detective Morrison's help, he provided increasingly specific details about the night of Henry's murder. He described the exact location where the body had been buried, the type of stones used to mark the grave, and even the personal effects that would have been buried with Henry. Working with French authorities and military historians, an investigation was launched at the site Tyler had described in Normandy. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, researchers found human remains buried exactly where Tyler had indicated, beneath the stone bridge near an old church. The remains were indeed those of a young American soldier, and forensic analysis revealed evidence consistent with manual strangulation rather than combat wounds. Among the personal effects found with the body was a partially written letter on torn paper from a military field manual, page 47. The radio protocols section, exactly as Tyler had described. The letter, though damaged by decades underground, was still partially legible. Experts in historical document analysis confirmed that it was written in the same handwriting as Henry Walsh's military records, and the visible portions matched Tyler's account nearly word for word. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a forensic anthropologist involved in the excavation, was stunned by the accuracy of Tyler's information. In 30 years of investigating historical cases, I've never seen anything like this. This teenager provided details about a 75-year-old crime scene that proved to be accurate down to the smallest specifics. There's simply no conventional way he could have known these things. The impact on Tyler's life was profound. The same classmates who had bullied him for his delusions now looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. Teachers who had dismissed his claims were forced to confront evidence that challenged their understanding of memory, consciousness, and the nature of human knowledge. I don't claim to understand how or why I remember being Henry Walsh, Tyler told a local news reporter. I just know that these memories feel as real and authentic as my memories from this lifetime. Maybe consciousness is more complex than we think. Maybe some part of us really does continue after death. Tyler's parents, who had spent months worrying about their son's mental health, found themselves grappling with a reality that defied explanation. We took him to doctors, therapists, anyone we thought could help him, his mother said. We never imagined that he might actually be telling the truth about something impossible. The case attracted the attention of researchers studying reincarnation and consciousness survival. Dr. Ian Stevenson's successor at the University of Virginia, Dr. Jim Tucker, interviewed Tyler extensively and declared his case one of the most evidentially strong reincarnation cases he'd encountered. What makes Tyler's case so compelling, Dr. Tucker explained, is the combination of historically verifiable details, the solving of an actual cold case, and the discovery of physical evidence that corroborates his memories. This goes beyond typical reincarnation cases into the realm of criminal investigation. For the families of both Henry Walsh and Sergeant Collins, Tyler's revelations brought a complex mixture of closure and pain. Henry's surviving relatives finally learned the truth about his disappearance and death. Sergeant Collins' family had to confront the reality that their ancestor had committed murder, but they also gained understanding of the guilt and trauma that had haunted him for the rest of his life. Sarah McKinnon's granddaughter, Linda, was particularly moved by the discovery of Henry's hidden gift. My grandmother spent 70 years wondering why Henry never wrote, thinking he might have stopped loving her. Now we know he loved her until his very last moment, and even tried to leave her something to remember him by. The silver locket was returned to Sarah's family, finally fulfilling Henry's last wish after 3/4 of a century. Tyler's high school held a special assembly where he was formally recognized for his role in solving the historical murder case. The same students who had once mocked him now listened in respectful silence as he shared his story and urged them to be more open-minded about experiences they didn't understand. I learned that being different doesn't make you crazy, Tyler told his classmates. Sometimes it just means you're carrying knowledge or experiences that others haven't had. Instead of laughing at things we don't understand, maybe we should listen more carefully. The case was officially closed by both American and French authorities, with Henry Walsh's death reclassified from killed in action to murdered. Sergeant James Collins was posthumously charged with murder, bringing legal closure to a crime that had gone unpunished for 75 years. Tyler graduated high school with honors and went on to study criminology in college, inspired by his experience with Detective Morrison. He continues to have detailed memories of Henry Walsh's life and has helped researchers understand more about the nature of consciousness and memory. I've learned to see these memories as a gift, Tyler reflects. They allowed me to bring justice to someone who died without it, to bring peace to families who had unanswered questions, and to prove that love and truth can transcend even death itself. Detective Morrison, whose own worldview was permanently changed by the case, became an advocate for taking seriously claims that might seem impossible at first glance. Tyler taught me that sometimes the most unbelievable stories turn out to be the most important truths. As investigators, we can't afford to dismiss evidence just because it challenges our assumptions about reality. The case continues to be studied by researchers around the world as one of the most well-documented examples of reincarnation memories leading to the solution of an actual crime. It stands as testament to the possibility that consciousness, memory, and identity may be far more complex and enduring than conventional science has yet discovered. What do you think about Tyler's incredible story? Could reincarnation really explain how a modern teenager solved a 75-year-old murder case? Have you ever had memories or knowledge that you couldn't explain through normal means? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story has opened your mind to new possibilities about life, death, and the mysteries of human consciousness, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing, true stories that challenge everything we think we know about reality.